Okay, so when you hear the words organic chemistry, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Because, for a lot of people, it's maybe this image of really thick, intimidating textbook.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some flashbacks to late-night study sections, or honestly, just a bit of dread.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You've probably heard the whispers, right?
Yeah,
That it's notoriously difficult, kind of a gatekeeper course in college.
definitely has that reputation.
But what if we told you that reputation might be a little bit, well, misguided?
Interesting.
Today, we're diving deep. We're cracking open Organic Chemistry for Dummies, the second edition by Dr. Arthur Winter.
Okay.
And our mission here, it's not really about reciting a textbook at you. It's more about pulling out those core foundational ideas right from the start, the introduction in Chapter 1.
Getting right to the heart of it.
Exactly.
Hmm.
We want to figure out what organic chemistry really is, why it's actually so important, and maybe crucially, how you can approach learning it without feeling, completely overwhelmed.
Kind of get those aha moments early on.
That's the goal,
Right.
right from the beginning.
Yeah, and you can think of this deep dive as maybe a shortcut to getting clear on it.
A shortcut, I like that.
We're not just going to list definitions. The idea is to help you build a more intuitive feel for it,
Right.
to unlock those insights that make even the really dense stuff sort of click.
Make it make sense.
Right. The book itself tries to be an interpreter, a guide, and that's what we want to do too. Help you see the subject, which often gets a bad rap, from a maybe fresher, more empowering angle.
Okay, so let's start right there. Let's shake hands with organic chemistry, maybe dispel some of those myths.
Good place to start.
What struck me right away, reading the intro, is that the book knows about this apprehension. It totally gets it.
It acknowledges it head on.
Yeah, it paints this picture, of lugging that heavy textbook off the shelf, flipping through what seems like endless pages, and just thinking, okay, this is not going to be a fun mystery novel.
Haha, definitely not.
That feeling of dread. It's
Mhm.
common, right? It's
Yeah.
not just you feeling that.
Oh, absolutely not. And what's so refreshing is the author, Dr. Winter, is just completely honest about it.
Yeah.
He totally validates that feeling, admits that he, like tons of students, and he even says some professors felt that exact same way at first.
Really? Even professors?
Yeah, he mentions expecting wearying trivia and coma-inducing lectures. He pictured these complex mathematical equations sprawling across mile-long chalkboards.
Wow. Okay, so he gets the fear.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then he says his actual experience, it was completely different. It was a real turning point for him.
And that seems to be where the book immediately starts to push back against those common ideas.
Exactly.
It challenges that notion that chemicals automatically means bad, like pesticides or toxins.
Right. The scary stuff.
But, think about it. Water is a chemical, H2O.
Mm.
Sugar, that's a chemical too.
Mm-hmm.
The enzymes in yeast that make beer by fermenting sugar into ethyl alcohol. Chemicals again.
All organic chemistry in action.
And our own bodies. The book calls us large vats of chemicals, and mostly organic ones, from our skin to our proteins. It's all chemistry.
It really is.
So if you're even remotely interested in how living things work or like the chemistry behind your coffee, you're already dealing with organic chemistry.
You're swimming in it, basically. And connecting that back, the author's own journey from kind of fighting the subject to actually enjoying it, that offers a really key insight, I think.
What's that?
The book basically argues that organic chemistry isn't inherently hard in the way, say, advanced physics might be. It's more that it demands hard work.
Okay. Consistent effort.
Precisely. It says organic chemistry relentlessly rewards that consistent effort. And on the flip side, it really punishes procrastination.
I can see that. No cramming allowed.
Pretty much. And it suggests that just shifting your attitude, seeing it less as this scary monster and more as maybe an expedition, that can make all the difference. It's less about innate talent, more about disciplined work.
And that perspective really helps explain the book's purpose, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, it says right up front, it's not trying to be your main textbook. It calls itself a practical complement.
Right, an add-on.
Yeah, or an interpreter, translator, and guide to the core ideas.
Yeah.
It seems focused on how to actually solve the problems, which is where people often get stuck, right?
Definitely.
So it's less about just memorizing facts and more about learning to think logically, organize your thoughts, and develop a solid strategy for tackling those tricky problems.
Building those problem-solving muscles.
Exactly. Okay, so we've tackled some myths. Let's get down to basics. What actually makes a molecule organic? What's the definition?
It's actually pretty straightforward at its core. Organic molecules are simply molecules that contain the element carbon.
Just carbon.
Well, primarily carbon. So studying organic chemistry means studying these carbon-based molecules, how they react, what their structures look like. And it's a huge field. We're talking millions and millions of known organic compounds, and chemists are finding or making new ones all the time.
Millions. Wow. But I thought it was interesting that the book points out the dividing line between organic and inorganic is kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not like organic molecules play by different rules of physics or chemistry than inorganic ones, like, say, salt or metals.
Right. It kills that old idea, that historical myth about some vital life force needed for organic stuff.
Exactly. That whole vitalism theory is long gone. It's all governed by the same fundamental laws.
Okay.
Which actually brings up a really important question.
Which is?
Why carbon? You know, out of all the elements on the periodic table, why is carbon the chosen one, the backbone of life in this huge field of chemistry? What makes it so special compared to everything else we call inorganic?
Good question. What does the book say?
It boils down to a few key things. First, incredible versatility. Carbon can form 4 bonds, 4 connections to other atoms.
Okay, 4 bonds. Why is that a big deal?
Think of it like Legos. A Lego brick with just 1 or 2 connection points is limited, but one with 4. You can build really complex, intricate structures in 3 dimensions. Carbon's 4 bonds allow for these varied and intricate designs, as the book puts it.
Like molecular architecture.
Exactly. Then there's something chemists sometimes call the Goldilocks principle.
Goldilocks. Not too hot, not too cold.
Sort of. Carbon bonds are just right in terms of strength. They're strong enough to be stable. You don't want molecules just falling apart randomly.
Definitely not.
But they're not so strong that they can't be broken or rearranged. Life requires reactions, breaking down food, building new tissues. If carbon bonds were too strong, like maybe silicon-oxygen bonds, reactions would be too slow, too difficult. If they were too weak, things would be too unstable. Carbon hits that sweet spot.
Stable, but reactive enough. Just right.
Just right. And the final piece, which is super important, is that carbon is amazing at bonding to itself.
Carbon bonding to carbon.
Yep. It can form long chains, branch chains, complex rings, all very stable. Combine that ability to bond strongly with itself and its ability to form 4 bonds and its ability to bond strongly with lots of other elements like hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen.
You get a recipe for massive diversity.
That's it. That's the foundation for the millions of organic compounds we know and the countless more possible.
That makes a little more sense now why carbon is central. It's perfectly suited for building complex stuff and that complexity. And he leads somewhere else the book touches on that I found really interesting. Organic chemistry isn't just one single thing, is it?
Not at all.
Once you understand carbon and its properties, what do chemists actually do with that knowledge?
Yep.
Does it branch out into different specialties?
Oh, absolutely. It's really like a big family tree of specialized fields. Each branch focuses on different aspects or applications of organic molecules. It's a super dynamic area.
Okay, so break it down for us. What are some of these branches?
Sure. So first up, you have synthetic organic chemists.
Synthetic, so they make stuff.
Exactly. Their main goal is to build organic molecules, often starting from cheap, simple materials and turning them into something valuable.
Like what?
Could be anything, really. Maybe they're developing general methods, like new ways to make carbon bonds the real backbone of organic molecules, or they might be tackling a specific complex molecule, like a potential new drug.
Pharmaceuticals.
Big time.
Yeah.
A huge part of synthetic chemistry is figuring out the best sequence of reactions, a multi-step synthesis, to make a drug efficiently. Even improving the yield of a drug synthesis by just a couple of % can save a company millions.
So they're like the molecular architects and construction crews.
Great analogy. Then there are bioorganic chemists.
Bioorganic. So life chemistry.
Pretty much. They focus heavily on enzymes. Enzymes are these huge organic molecules in our cells, the real worker bees, the book calls them. They catalyze or speed up almost all the reactions needed for life.
Like digestion, metabolism.
Yep. Breaking down food, storing energy, building tissues, even fermentation in yeast. Bioorganic chemists try to understand how these enzymes work their magic at a molecular level.
And why is understanding that mechanism so important?
Well, if you understand how an enzyme works, you can figure out how to control it. For example, you can design molecules called enzyme inhibitors that block the enzyme's action.
Like turning off a switch.
Exactly. Aspirin is a classic example the book gives. It inhibits enzymes called COX enzymes.
COX enzymes.
Cyclooxygenase enzymes. They're involved in making compounds that signal pain and inflammation. Aspirin blocks them so you feel less pain. Many modern drugs work by inhibiting specific enzymes.
Fascinating. Okay, who's next?
Next up, natural products chemists.
Natural products, so stuff from plants and animals.
Exactly. They isolate and identify organic compounds directly from living things. Plants, fungi, bacteria, marine organisms, you name it.
Is that still relevant? I thought we mostly synthesize drugs now.
Oh, incredibly relevant. Historically, most medicines came from nature. Penicillin from a fungus, pain relief compounds from willow bark.
Right.
Even today, many drugs are either natural products themselves or derived from them. Think about things we use every day too, like nicotine from tobacco, caffeine from coffee beans. These are all natural products.
So they're like explorers, searching nature for useful molecules.
That's a good way to put it. And it often connects back to synthetic chemistry.
How so?
Well, once a natural products chemist finds something interesting, a synthetic chemist might step in to figure out how to make it in the lab, or even better, modify its structure.
Why modify it?
Maybe to make it more potent or have fewer side effects, or crucially, to overcome resistance.
Like antibiotic resistance.
Exactly. The book mentions penicillin again. Bacteria evolved ways to break it down, so synthetic chemists had to tweak the penicillin molecule to create new versions the bacteria couldn't handle as easily. It's described as a kind of ongoing chemical warfare.
Wow. Okay, keep going. This is interesting.
All right. Then we have physical organic chemists. These folks are interested in the fundamental principles governing why and how organic molecules behave and react the way they do.
The deep why questions.
Right. They study things like kinetics, how fast reactions happen, and thermodynamics, which helps predict how much product you'll get from a reaction. They also use techniques like spectroscopy, using light to figure out molecular structures, and photochemistry, which is about how light interacts with molecules. Think photosynthesis.
So they provide the underlying theory and understanding.
Precisely. Then there are organometallic chemists.
Organo, metallic, metal, and organic.
Yep. They study molecules that contain bonds between carbon atoms and metal atoms.
Why is that combination special?
Those carbon-metal bonds often have unique reactivity. They can be easier to make and break than, say, carbon-carbon bonds. This makes organometallic compounds really useful as catalysts, substances that speed up chemical reactions without being used up themselves. Many industrial processes rely on these catalysts.
Got it. Catalysts are key.
Definitely. Now, moving into the modern era, we have computational chemists.
Using computers, obviously.
Right. As computers have gotten incredibly powerful, these chemists use software to model molecules and predict their properties, like their 3D shape, their energy, how they might react.
Can they, design drugs entirely on a computer now? That whole in silico design thing.
It's a huge part of it, yeah. In silico drug design is a major tool in what's called rational drug design. Computers can screen millions of potential drug candidates virtually to see which ones might fit best into a target enzyme or receptor.
So it saves a ton of lab work.
It massively speeds things up and focuses the experimental effort. But the book points out it doesn't completely replace the lab yet. You still need experimental chemists to actually make the most promising candidates and test them. It's more of a powerful partnership.
Okay, makes sense. Are we near the end of the family tree?
Almost. Last but not least, materials chemists.
Materials like plastics.
Exactly. They focus on the organic materials that make up so many everyday things. Plastics, polymers, coatings, paints, dyes, even explosives.
Stuff we use constantly.
All the time.
Yeah.
Teflon for nonstick pans, PVC for pipes, polyethylene for milk jugs and carpets. Materials chemists design these polymers with specific properties. They also work on things like developing greener, more environmentally friendly detergents, or creating the specialized organic materials needed for making computer chips through photolithography.
Photolithography, using light to etch circuits.
Yeah, essentially. It relies on light-sensitive organic coatings.
It's actually kind of mind-blowing when you list it all out like that.
Right.
From the medicines keeping us healthy, to the device you might be listening on right now, to the packaging our food comes in. These different branches of organic chemistry are just everywhere, shaping our lives in ways we probably don't even think about.
Absolutely. It's far from just an academic subject locked away in a lab.
So let's bring this back to the listener, back to you maybe facing the subject for the first time or revisiting it. The book's intro, besides setting the stage, gives some really solid advice on how to actually learn this stuff.
Some practical tips.
It does assume you've got some basic chemistry under your belt, right? Things like the periodic table, atoms, bonding basics, kinetics, equilibria.
Yeah, it suggests a typical two-semester general chemistry course is the ideal background. You need that foundation.
Makes sense.
And one of the really helpful things the book highlights is that it's designed to be flexible.
How so?
You don't necessarily have to read it cover to cover like a novel. It says you can hopscotch around.
Yeah.
If you're stuck on a specific topic in your main course, like, say, drawing resonance structures or figuring out NMR spectra,
Which can be tricky.
definitely, you can just jump to that chapter in the Dummies book for a clear explanation and extra practice. Or, of course, you can read it straight through as a full guide.
And it really hammers home the importance of working problems, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Practice, practice, practice. It provides guides for those common tricky areas and explicitly warns about typical pitfalls, the common mistakes students make. The goal seems to be giving you the tools and confidence to, swim rather than just panic when you hit challenging material.
Like a spotter at the gym, but for chemistry problems.
Uh-huh. Yeah, something like that.
And it even mentions extra resources beyond the book itself. There's an online cheat sheet.
Yeah, for quick reference, things like common functional groups, the periodic table, and it mentions additional articles online for digging deeper. It really tries to be a complete support system.
A toolkit, like you said earlier.
Exactly.
So wrapping this all up then, what we've really seen today is that organic chemistry, it's so much more than just some tough course you have to survive.
Absolutely.
It's literally the chemistry of life.
Yeah.
It drives innovation in medicine, in tech, in materials.
Mm.
It's fundamental to understanding the world around us, really.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, instead of seeing it as this, daunting obstacle, maybe you can start to see it more like a fascinating expedition, full of really cool stuff or practical applications.
Couldn't agree more. Organic chemistry, it's not just a class. It's not just a bunch of dense books. It really is this fundamental lens, a way of understanding almost everything,
Yeah.
from the tiniest processes inside your own cells
Yeah.
to huge global industries like pharmaceuticals or advanced materials manufacturing. It's a field that, yes, it challenges you, but it also rewards that effort, and it's constantly evolving and innovating. It's pretty amazing when you step back and look at the whole picture.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the wonder of organic chemistry. We really hope you feel a bit more informed, maybe a little less intimidated, and hopefully a lot more curious.